What is going on? I want to welcome you from half court today being Wednesday, January 19th. I, of course, am your host, Sean Murphy, alongside the man in the paint, the guy. I can't think of anything that rhymes with paint other than taint. My guy, Troy Serkey. Troy, how are we doing, man? That was my worst intro for you of all time.
Better than I deserve, Sean.
Oh my gosh, you deserve far better than that, but that's the intro you got. Oh my goodness, dude, it's good to see you, man. It's good to be here talking hoops. How have you been, man? What's been going on with you? You've been watching any basketball here and there?
Oh yeah, here and there I have been watching some good games. Watched the Denver Lakers game a few nights ago. Denver Trailblazers game, that was a blowout as well.
Yeah.
Pistons, I saw their full game half of their game against Phoenix, but the whole game against Chicago, which wasn't the brightest, but it was still kind of fun.
Right.
Watched quite a bit of Hornets stuff. So, hey,
Yeah.
I know we got to talk about Bridges later. Didn't watch that game, but the Hornets are kind of my bad bandwagon team, I guess. So
yeah, they're the fun middle of the pack team. You know what I'm saying? Like the Hornets might not be the best team in the NBA, but they might be the most fun. Just as far to me personally, I would still say if I had to do my rankings, right, of my league pass teams,
yeah,
I would still put Memphis number one. Just because of how good they've been lately. But then I would go Chicago and then I would go Charlotte personally.
I actually, another game I watched all the way through because, Ohio is the Cavs Trailblazers game a few nights ago. That was pretty good. They had a good game against them on the road. Markkanen hit a couple of nice shots. Darius Garland is really coming on. So I guess they're up there too in my mediocre favorite teams.
Yeah. I mean, the Cavs are not mediocre, man. You know what I mean? Like, right. It's crazy because they're among the top of the conference. They're 27-18. They rolled.
Beat the Nets pretty good.
Yeah. I was just about to say they rolled at home against the Nets. I mean, that there is a lot of basketball to talk about, and that is exactly what we do here because this is From Half Court Reach, and every week Troy and I talk about all things NBA basketball. If you like that, be sure to subscribe to the podcast. Be sure to follow us on social media at Troy Serkey 44, at Sean Half Court. From Half Court is available on all the services and the podcast places that you want to be. So be sure to follow, share with your friends, and join the conversation here from Half Court. Troy, first of all, I do want to mention, because I brought this to your attention last week or about a couple minutes ago, because I just realized this as well. Next week is the 1 year anniversary of the From Half Court podcast. So each and every one of you, want to thank you. But also that means that it is literally going to be released, like just on our regular schedule. It will be releasing on the 1 year anniversary of From Half Court.
Awesome.
Which is absolutely crazy. I go back and look at what that episode was about, and it was like, what's going on with the Brooklyn Nets? And if only I knew what would be going on from there. Troy, absolutely crazy. But dude, do you have a favorite episode we've done together, Troy? Is there or not even an episode, but like, is there a moment that sticks out to you so far of like favorite podcast moment we've had so far?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I will always cherish when I was the special guest and not the co-host.
When you were special?
Yeah. Back when I was special. We had so much fun doing the Mount Rushmore of shooters. We had an almost 2-hour episode talking about the Lakers and their signing of, do I dare to say him, Andre Drummond. That to me, I think will always stick out. But I'll never forget when we first started. It was like the first 20 seconds of the episode, and you called me Karl Malone. You called me the mailman, and I'll
never forget that.
I'll
never forget the anger in your eyes when I called you Karl Malone.
I still remember how my heart was racing when you compared me to a pedophile. Anyways, this is From Half Court, when each and every week Sean and I discuss all things NBA basketball.
Dude, we get the intro
be
twice.
Sure to describe what.
Did you say be sure to describe?
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh my gosh, Troy, we're in for a doozy today. By the way, if you're wondering why I'm wearing a Lions jersey here, because as of a recording, we just are in the second half of the Cardinals-Rams wild card game, where Matthew Stafford is absolutely pooping down the throats of the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, it was 17-0 last time I checked. What's it now?
It is 28-0.
Okay. Little improvement.
Oh yeah, no. So what happened? So it wasn't 17-0. So like what happened was so fun thing. This isn't a football podcast, but hey, it's my podcast. That like what happened was Kyler Murray was it was 14-0. Literally,
14-0.
He's in his own end zone, starts freaking out, holds onto the ball for way too long, realizes it, and then he's getting hit, tries to throw it up, and throws it right into a Rams cornerback who gets a pick six from 1 yard away. It was,
looking forward to watching the highlights of that.
Yeah, it's one of the ugliest football games I've ever seen. So ugly that it kind of felt like it was basketball. But anyway, that's okay. Speaking of, Troy, let's talk some basketball, shall we? Yep. So the topic of the show is NBA All-Star ballots. We are about a month away, Troy, from the All-Star game in the city of Cleveland. I looked at tickets right before this, just out of curiosity. First of all, they're all in the resale market now. You can't just go on Ticketmaster, and even then you'd have to go on like the premium thing. But yeah, like the cheapest ticket for an upper bowl seat to the All-Star game is $2,000. Yeah. $2,000. Yeah, it's insane.
I actually was thinking about going if it was like 200.
No, it's 2,000. So
oops.
Yeah, so I was like, yeah, that'd be fun to go. That's never happening. But I've accepted it, and that's okay. But Troy, each and every year, it's always like a debate as to who's in the All-Star game, but ultimately who's starting, right? I don't really want to get into like who's all going to be in the All-Star game, like all 12 guys, because I think
on each squad,
you can name so many different players, and I think the semantics of who's the 11th guy on the All-Star team versus who's the third guy out, you know what I'm saying? Like I think that gets a little too muddy. But what I think is a valid conversation is who deserves to start. And so today, before we recorded the podcast, I texted you, be sure to come ready with your All-Star ballot. And so with that, Troy, how about let's start with the Eastern Conference, because you and I both agreed that was the easier conference to do.
Do you want to go position by position, or do you want to just
Yeah, so let's go position by position. First, let's just start with the two guards. Let's start with the guards position, and we'll go to the front court from there. Does that sound good?
Sounds good. Me first, you first, same time. What are we doing?
I want you to go first. First. I want you to name your two starting guards in the Eastern Conference, and I want you to tell me why.
Okay. My two starting guards for the Eastern Conference are Trae Young of the Atlanta Hawks and Demar Derozan of the Chicago Bulls. Because Trae is having another fantastic year. He has really proven himself in the Eastern Conference. Hawks maybe not have been as impressive as last year. However, he had a couple of 40-point games already. He had a 50-pointer against the Portland Trailblazers a couple of weeks ago.
Insane.
Yeah, absolutely insane. And I don't know. I just, to be honest, Sean, there's no one else that deserves to start at point guard besides Trae Young, in my opinion.
Yeah, he's the best.
Just having a year. He's having a career so far, and I'm all in for Trae Young. I'm a big Trae Young fan.
Yeah, I think we've just gotten to the point where there's certain players where it's just kind of a lock at their position, and I think Trae Young is just the best point guard in the Eastern Conference. And now maybe if Kyrie played and he was playing at a really high level, then maybe you can make the argument that he could be. But I think as of right now, like making the argument of anyone else being the best point guard in the East, I would say you're wrong. I will say it is surprising how quickly things are blowing up in Atlanta. Like
Cam Reddish was a big deal.
Well, because reports are suggesting that Reports are suggesting that anyone that not named Trae Young or Clint Capella is reportedly on the market this free agency. So like they're looking to radically shape up that core group of guys around them. So, hey, who knows? Maybe that means instead of Cam Reddish, perhaps the Pistons could look at a guy like DeAndre Hunter.
Right.
So
he's a guy I was thinking too.
Yeah, 100%. So as far as that goes, I'm definitely shocked on that. But besides all the chaos in Atlanta, the one thing that is a constant is Trae Young. Now I will say they did just win their first home game since November, and it's the middle of January.
Home game. You're supposed to win at home, Sean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's a bit of a problem. But it's not Trae Young's fault. I'll say that much. I will say, it's hard to put him there for how bad he is defensively at times. But as far as his overall game, he's the best point guard in the East. And then you said the next guard you had is DeMar DeRozan.
Yep.
Yeah. Want to talk a little bit about DeMar and what he's been doing this year?
Yeah, I mean, he's been probably taking the league by the biggest surprise, in my opinion, with how fluid the Chicago Bulls are. We talked a little bit in the summertime of like, yeah, they're going to be good, but like, will they be championship contenders? I mean, they're proving that they're all in with this core. But, with what we saw with DeRozan in Toronto, we saw a great player. We saw incredible flashes, but obviously no match for LeBron James. When we saw him in San Antonio, not really any surrounding pieces around him. Looked like his career was kind of slowly declining. But man, when he got to Chicago, everything turned around for his career, in my opinion. And just he's a guy he's a bucket. He's a good passer. He's a scorer too, not just a shooter, but a scorer. He can put the ball in the hole. He can dish it to his other two guys, Vucevic and Levine. And Sean, look out NBA, because Chicago's back to be a possible contender for the Eastern Conference as far as Eastern Conference Finals. So to me, there's no one else at the 2 spot besides DeMar DeRozan that I could have voted for.
Yeah, I agree. Listen, it's Trae Young and DeMar DeRozan, right? I mean, it's kind of the easiest guard. Like that's the easiest, like that's like one of the locks, in my opinion, of this all-star ballot. I just think from top to bottom, there's no better 2 guards in the Eastern Conference. I would say the third is Zach Levine. I think he's kind of the odd one out, but bring him right off the bench. Let him do some highlights, give him some minutes with DeMar DeRozan in the All-Star game. Let him throw down some sick dunks. We'll be just fine.
Yeah. And stat-wise, do I dare to say Bradley Beal's honestly having a pretty incredible year too, stat-wise?
Yeah, Bradley Beal's having a great year too. I mean, they're probably both going to be all-stars, if we're being honest. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They're probably both going to be guards. They're going to be coming off the bench. So those guys certainly could be contending for that. But I also have Trae Young and DeMar DeRozan. That one is pretty easy. Now moving on to the front court, let's go small forward and power forward next.
Okay.
So I'll start on this one.
Okay.
Because I don't think you and I are gonna have to sweat on this one much.
No, not really.
So small forward, you want to just go on 3? 1, 2, 3. Kevin Durant. Yeah, 100%. Thank you. Yeah, that was so in sync. That was so good. But yeah, it's Kevin Durant, right? I mean, arguably the best player in the world. Obviously he's injured, so hopefully he'll be back in time for the All-Star game. But if he's not, then that's where we could see a reserve come in. However, as far as who deserves to be a starter, do you kind of want to, like, while I fix my mic real quick, do you want to just talk about what Kevin Durant's been doing this season a little bit?
Yeah, Kevin Durant's been being Kevin Durant. It's that simple, in my opinion. He's a guy that I think we talked a little bit about, earlier this season. He had a little chip on his shoulder, I think, after that gross loss in the Eastern Conference semifinals in Game 7 against Milwaukee, and watching Milwaukee walk away with the title. I think he has a lot to prove this year, that he still is not just the best player on the regular season, but he can definitely compete in the playoffs. We saw him win multiple championships with Golden State. And he's a guy that this season is carrying his Nets to maybe not exactly how we thought the season would go. I thought for sure to be a lock at 1, but they're having around 3 right now, 3 or 4, right? For their spot in the Eastern Conference. So as far as the Nets.
Well, now too, I think I was just going to say, I mean, for the Nets, like what perfect timing to have Kyrie Irving as a part-time player, right?
Yeah.
I mean, at the very least, just to have him on road games is absolutely essential. Now, I would say, I'm sure now more than ever, they're really wishing that Kyrie was available full time. But at the end of the day, I think to your point, I think Kevin Durant is probably felt disrespected by the lack of attention he's gotten the last couple years. And in case y'all forgot, he runs this league. So
he does.
Yeah. So
and he had a nice 50 piece against our Detroit Pistons at Little Caesars Arena a couple of weeks ago as well.
Yeah. He broke the
LCA
scoring record in the Little Caesars Arena. Blake Griffin's record, by the way. But with that, Troy, the 4 in the East, it's Giannis, right? Yeah. I mean, what's there to say? Finals MVP, one of the greatest athletes in the history of the game. I think someone that could possibly be in the GOAT conversation by the end of his career. Just because of his sheer dominance as far as how he plays the game. Imagine, because here's the thing, Milwaukee could win some rings now. You know what I'm saying? Like they
already got one.
Yeah, they're contending to win multiple rings going forward. So, listen, Giannis, there's just nothing to say other than he's if Kevin Durant's the best player in the world, he's the second best player in the world. You could literally interchange the two. They're the best players in the world, in my opinion. Yeah, there's no doubt. And, I think with this season last year, I think he's playing exactly how I thought he would be playing this year. He had a little was he out for COVID or injury? I can't remember, back around Christmas, a little before Christmas. Yeah. So he was in health and safety protocols.
Okay. Yeah. So he had COVID then. And then, I think he balled out after that, and he's been the same. He's a guy that can get you 30 a night. He's a guy that can get you 15 boards a night too, a couple blocks, a couple assists. He's a guy that not just impacts his team, but pure dominance on every stat. So you got to have Giannis at 4.
Yep. Speaking of pure dominance, I think the 5 spot's pretty locked up in the Eastern Conference as well. Troy, why is Joel Embiid the starting 5 in the East?
Yeah, Joel Embiid is the starting 5 in mine for the East because of his impact on the 76ers team. I mean, look at it. Without Ben Simmons this year, they've been really, missing something. And, they're not completely disappointing, but they're a team that needs their veterans. And I would call Joel Embiid definitely a veteran at this point in his career to step up. It's been excellent watching a guy like Tyrese Maxey be balling out. It's excellent seeing, I guess, Drummond come off the bench and put a couple of nice boards up for him. But Joel Embiid is a guy that a true modern day big man, really changing and evolving that center position. I think he's a guy that's a beast down on the floor. You and I may not like him and the 76ers team. And I think you and I have been the biggest critics of them over the years, but he's a guy that can sure influence his team. And there's no one better that can do it at the center position, in my opinion, than Joel Embiid.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, listen, he's the modern representation of Hakeem Olajuwon, right? He's got that elite footwork. He can score at 3 levels. He's elite as a defender. He's the best big man in the world up there with Nikola Jokic. So, averages 27 and 10, does it all. Now I will say, I always question if Joel Embiid comes into each season in the best shape. I think a lot of his health or a lot of his ailments that he has physically, I wonder about his conditioning and all that kind of stuff. But what you can't question is, he can show up not running on a treadmill for 3 months and he can still put up 20. You know what I mean? So he's just a consistent 27, 30 a game. Now I will say, and this is actually something I do kind of actually want to talk about after the Eastern Conference, because I think Daryl Morey owes it to Joel Embiid to actually figure something out in Philly. I think we'll talk about that more in a little bit, but 100%. Even with everything he's had to deal with this season, I actually do kind of feel bad for Joel Embiid, because Yeah, it just feels like it feels like a wasted year, but he's putting up great stats despite of it. But we'll talk about that more in a little bit. For now, he absolutely does deserve to be recognized as an all-star. So that's the Eastern Conference, pretty easy. Now the West. This is the one that's going to have a little bit more conversation.
And I think the conversation isn't necessarily about talent, at least that I have in my list. It's about filling the position, in my opinion. Would your list the same?
Yeah. It's all position because
my 5 is not the best 5 in the West. My 5 is the best positions in the West.
Yeah. So I went a little differently. Okay. So let's start with our front courts.
Yeah.
I think we both have Steph Curry there. I'm gonna go on a limb. We both
do. We sure do.
Who do you have as your second guard?
I have John Morant.
I have John Morant.
There we go.
Dude, John Morant, he's not gonna be. It's not gonna be him, but he should be. You know what I mean?
Why do you say it's not gonna be? Because Sean, I don't know how you can make an argument for anyone else.
I mean, it could be Devin Booker. Devin Booker just won Player of the Week. He's been having a phenomenal run of late. He's that more traditional 2 guard.
And the Suns are the second best team in the West. So
it's like it's the traditional, like, who's the who's the traditional 2 guard. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
So to me personally, I want to see the 2 best guards in the West. And to me, the 2 best guards in the West of this year have been John Morant and Steph Curry.
I agree.
That's me personally.
Yeah.
John Morant has been so good. I think he should be allowed to transcend position and just be one of the starting guards in the front court.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking too. And I just think the step up that he has had this year he's a guy that if he doesn't score 30, you're surprised. He's a guy that impacts all levels of his team. He's a guy that really has taken Memphis. He's put Memphis on the shoulders.
Yeah. Now I will say it actually looks like people are on our side because as of 4 days ago. So as of the time this comes out, it'll actually be 6 days old. So it'll be a little outdated, but as of when we're recording, it looks like currently the 2 leading vote getters for the guards in the West are Steph Curry and John Morant. So looks like people are siding with us, which is cool. But another name on there that I guess I didn't realize was technically listed as a guard, Luca Doncic.
Yeah, I don't have Luca on my list, but he's a guy that would be the most extreme honorable mention. I'd probably have him even over Booker. But again, that's kind of like how you wanted to define the 2 position, in my opinion. So
yeah, now I will say, I think all-star voting can be a little stupid sometimes because, again, granted, it's a fan thing. All for it. However, the fact that both Kyrie Irving and Derrick Rose both have more votes, they have more votes than Fred VanVleet right now, which is heresy. And Klay Thompson, even though I love him and it's great to see him back, Klay Thompson currently has more votes than Devin Booker. So
yeah, I think I heard even Derrick Rose at one point had more votes than Trae Young. Is that true?
No.
Okay.
No. Derrick Rose is at 373,000. Trae Young is at 1.5 million.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah. So thankfully that's not the case.
Yeah.
But
we're at the 3 position, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So now let's go to the 3.
Probably easier here.
Yeah. Yep. It's LeBron James.
It's LeBron James. Now now that I see that, I kind of was listing him as more of a 4.
Yeah, me too.
So my 3 is a little bit different, actually. My 3 is my by far worst player on this list.
Do you have Andrew Wiggins?
No, I have Paul George.
Oh, I have Paul George too.
Oh.
Well, I felt weird putting Paul George here. I'll be honest.
Felt very weird, yes.
Because I get he's had a really good season. However, he's been kind of injured of late. He was playing all-star level before that. But then if it wasn't going to be Paul George, my next choices were going to be either Andrew Wiggins, Anthony Davis, or Karl Anthony Towns. And I listen, I don't think Paul George is going to be active by the time the All-Star game comes around. So I think I think we're going to see Andrew Wiggins start in an all-star game.
Wow.
Which is weird.
It is weird.
He's also the third leading vote getter in the front court right now. He's getting more votes than Paul George. Isn't that crazy? So
I'm not going to argue with it though, I guess.
Yeah. Well, because there's always like, I would always say every single year, like of like the starting 5 in an all-star game, there's always kind of like the 8 or 9 guys that are kind of always there. And then there's like the one that you rotate in, or like the 1 or 2 you rotate in. Right. So like in 2019, it was Kemba Walker starting at home in Charlotte. This year it's going to be Andrew Wiggins. I just, he has been having a really good year. He has been absolutely solid, but yeah, I think LeBron James is definitely one of those forwards. And the West is so weird right now as far as how the front court is shaken out, as far as like, because here's what I wouldn't say Anthony Davis played like an all-star this year.
No way.
I wouldn't say, I think Draymond Green's an all-star. I wouldn't have him as a starter. I don't think he's good enough offensively. I don't think you start 2 centers.
Don't think so either, Sean.
Especially if you had Karl Anthony Towns and Jokic starting together in an all-star game. I think you would have the slowest, worst, like what a stupid lineup, because you're going to end up, out of the 10 guys that are going to be on the court after the draft, 3 of them are going to be Joel Embiid, Nikola Jokic, and Karl Anthony Towns. That would be the worst all-star game of all time.
So moving to our 5 quick, Sean, I think we both have Jokic, right?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah, good.
I mean, but Jokic is like the same. Wow, we literally had it all the same. We were like, I don't know if we're gonna have the same.
We had all 10 the same.
We literally had all,
and we did not plan that at all.
Nope, we didn't. That just shows who we are, Troy.
Wow, we're really coming on our own for basketball. That's for sure. We becoming one on this podcast.
Yeah. Well, listen, I think you and I, in every other area of life, have a lot of differences, and that's part of our friendship. But at the core of it, there's just things that you and I are just the same. You know what I mean? Like when it comes to basketball, I know you and I are generally going to agree on stuff. You and I look at things very similarly, which is why this podcast works out pretty well. I would say. That's why. 100%. But real quick, just to touch on Nikola Jokic. I called Joel Embiid the best big in the NBA earlier. I was wrong. It's Nikola Jokic. Jokic is, I think he's one of the best stories of the past decade in the NBA, being a second round pick turned a perennial all-star MVP caliber player. Perhaps the most unorthodox kind of play out of a big that we've ever seen as far as his style of play. He obviously is kind of going through like a difficult season. No Jamal Murray there, still trying to put the pieces together. I just hope that we get to see Nikola Jokic in an NBA Finals in the next few years. Because
that'd be fun.
Yeah, 100%. He might be the star that he might be the NBA star with the least recognition as far as who like what people know about him. But he is just, he's just an absolute talent.
Yeah. One, I guess, signature move of the Joker that I think is incredible is those one-hand catches he has and then just puts it in the hoop. Like that is so unorthodox, but it's so effective.
Well, even I go to like his baseball passes, or like I go to like his I just go to like a lot of his like behind the back stuff. Like the thing that's crazy about Jokic to me, because you could literally just pick so many different parts of his game. To me, it's his eyes. It's what he sees. You know what I'm saying? Because his vision is just absolutely incredible. It's next level. It's absolute next level. He might have the best vision in the league, like including guards. Like he's up there with Chris Paul in that regard to me.
Yeah, he sees the game differently. And Sean, there's one fact about Jokic that you may not know that I think you would love. So in the 2014 NBA draft, of course, he's a second round pick, and all the hype is around the top 10, and no one really cares about anything after that.
Right.
On ESPN Live, when Jokic got drafted, it was a Taco Bell commercial.
Isn't that insane?
It is. A future MVP in the second round. No one cared. A Taco Bell commercial was more worthy than that pick.
Oh my gosh, that's absolutely insane. Oh my gosh. But hey, now he's having a Baja Blast.
Yes,
really turned his career around. We're not going to make that joke again. But anyway, so wow, I was surprised by how easily that actually went putting together the ballot. Now I will say, Devin Booker just dropped 48 tonight.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, like literally, I just saw that. Like the game
on a back-to-back too.
Just finished. Antonio. Yeah, on a back-to-back going from Detroit to San Antonio. Absolutely unreal. Devin Booker's he might be playing the best basketball of his career right now, by the way. Like I watched that game against Detroit. He was putting on a clinic. And granted, it's Detroit, all that kind of stuff, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. It's the NBA. Like at the end of the day, there's no such thing as an off night in the league. And, Devin Booker, absolutely cerebral on the offensive end. They're currently 33-9. They're gonna run the West. It's insane. So shout out to Devin Booker. But I do kind of want to shift. I brought up how I kind of wanted to talk about the Philadelphia 76ers situation real quick. Because it's sounding like the latest reports in Simmons watch reports are suggesting that Ben Simmons is willing to sit out the entire season if need be. And apparently they had talks last week. And it sounds like neither side is budging. It sounds like the Simmons camp isn't budging. It sounds like Daryl Morey still wants an all-star caliber player. It sounds like he still wants that Damian Lillard caliber player.
But you don't understand, Sean, his value is dropping every day he's not playing a game.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Like I think he's just relying on a team getting desperate towards the trade deadline to go out and make a move. I think like the one team, like I think Portland is getting pretty desperate, but they're not getting Damian Lillard desperate. They've both made it clear. Both sides have made it clear that Damian Lillard wants to stay. Portland wants to keep him. So let's stop putting him in trade rumors, please. But like even if he was in trade rumors, you can't possibly make the argument that Damian Lillard is a worthy asset in return for Ben Simmons. He's just not. No. So
I don't even think I don't even know, Sean, if there is any all-star on both sides, like current 2022 all-star that is worthy for a straight up trade of Ben Simmons.
Yeah, 100%.
Which tells me that Ben Simmons is not a top 25 player, in my opinion.
No, he's not, especially not after the playoffs last year, especially not with the thing that we're seeing, not with how we're seeing this situation unfold right now. I think he's increasingly just seeing his value just drop and drop and drop. And, obviously, like this isn't going to be his legacy or anything. I think, or at least it very well could not be his legacy if he comes back and plays great basketball. Like we could all forget about it and go, oh yeah, Philly was the problem, but I don't see that happening. Here's what I will say though, because I think we can put a lot of blame on Ben Simmons. And I think we've done a lot of blaming Ben Simmons. I think it's time we start having a legitimate conversation about Daryl Morey, because I'm just going to say it, Troy. I think he's a fraud. I'm just going to say it, because listen, yes, in Houston, he put together a lot of winning teams. And they were a Chris Paul hamstring away from going to the NBA Finals. They were a disastrous shooting performance away from going to the NBA Finals and defeating that Warriors dynasty team, right? A lot of it was, to his credit, he was always getting creative and trying to get ways to make that team better. He was bending trades out of thin air, doing a lot of crazy things, right? However, Houston never won a championship. Um, I would say he's inhibited a pretty crappy deck of cards in Philadelphia with some of the assets they have. I think even as much as you and I like Tobias Harris, I think you and I can both say that the max contract he got was not worthwhile. I do not think he's worth max dollars. And on top of that, I think, if I'm being frank, I think Joel Embiid is the last guy you want to play the patient game with as far as utilizing his prime, because we have seen how fragile his body is as a young player. Imagine when Joel Embiid gets into his 30s.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like we think it's bad. We thought it was bad before. I very much think as the miles keep being put on his body, it can only get worse.
Mm-hmm.
So, Troy, what do you think of this? What do you think of these developments? What's on your mind here? Am I insane?
No, and we know that Doc Rivers is not the problem. And I think that's the most important thing to point out, in my
100%.
opinion, when looking at this. And yeah, it's really unfortunate because I think Ben Simmons is a guy that I think he's in his head right now as far as he thinks he's better than what he is. And he doesn't understand that GMs around the league do not view him the way he views himself. But if he's smart and truly has all this confidence, Sean, he's going to put a uniform on and he's going to go out and he's going to prove his value.
Well, here's the thing though, because I don't know if Ben Simmons is the delusional one on his value. I think Daryl Morey's the delusional one on his value because because I think Daryl Morey going to other executives saying we want Bradley Beal, we want Damian Lillard, we want an all-star caliber player and some picks. Like, you're out of your mind.
Maybe a pick to a on the border playoff / lottery team might be the best bet, in my opinion.
Well, right now, like the only trade that I would genuinely say, like the best case scenario for the Philadelphia 76ers is getting De'Aaron Fox in return. But reports say that Philly has no interest in that. Now, the other thing too is that they also have Tyrese Maxey that's playing really well. And you can make the argument that, Maxey is playing really well for them. You don't really want to bring in another point guard. Maybe you want to bring in someone, but even then, listen, you just got to get the most talented player that you can and try to salvage this thing, because right now, this is a disaster. And even if Philly wants to blame Ben Simmons on this, a lot of this comes down to how they handled Ben Simmons leading up to this. And I think Daryl Morey is only making the situation worse. And so I think, yes, he's not letting Ben Simmons dictate what's going to happen. But if you're playing a game of chicken over the well-being of your franchise, because at a certain point, trying to preserve having him on your roster or trying to get the most value out of him possible, at a certain point, you're literally just hampering yourself just to prove a point. Right.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing here. This situation has gotten beyond stupid. Right. What's the best case scenario out of this situation for either side at this point? Ben Simmons, obviously his best case scenario is just getting on a different team, right? Him, that's fine. Whatever. We've accepted he's not playing another game in a Philadelphia 76ers uniform. Fine. We know that. But Daryl Morey, you have to realize what you have and you got to utilize it, right? Because Joel Embiid is not getting younger.
Yeah. And I wonder if the best, what's in my head right now, and maybe it's wrong, Sean, but is a team like Minnesota or whatever, but a pick, your first round pick, which is going to be a 13th, 12th pick for Ben Simmons.
Well, it's going to be more than a pick. You got to get a young player and a pick. Let's not say Ben Simmons is worth the 12th pick in the draft. He's better than that. right?
Yeah, but
Like
he
good.
needs to play a game this season to prove that to me, Sean. His performance in the playoffs was pathetic this past spring.
Right, but like if I'm Minnesota, I'd be okay with sending D'Angelo Russell on a pick for Ben Simmons.
Sure.
Like
sure. That's
you know
fine.
what I mean? Like
that's fine.
That is a good, like an all-star caliber guard to pair with Joel Embiid, someone that can score, someone that like at the very least you can start with a foundation and like build outward from there. Right.
And my biggest question to Philadelphia is, what do you have to lose? Like he's not playing this year already. Like what are you gonna lose by trading him and maybe not reaching your full potential? You know what I mean? Like you have
and
anything is better than this situation for Philadelphia. Anything is better than this.
Yeah, and that's the point. Like because listen, if we're in November, if we're in October, and it's like, you know, we're still like waiting for the season to start. You know, we're just at the beginning. We're like a third of the way through. It's like, okay, you can make sense of it, right? We're halfway through the season. You know, they just played game 42. You know what I mean? Like correction, they played game 43. We're over the hump. We're over halfway. So, you know, if you want to just hold on to them this entire season, waste a salary spot and waste an entire season of your franchise just to prove a point, fine, go ahead. But in my opinion, I don't think you should be applauded for that. I think that makes you look stupid. I think it makes you look prideful. I think it's a chicken contest, and I think they're both losing.
Yeah, all good things, Sean. Can't argue with any of that.
Yeah, I had to get that off my chest because, man, that Troy, it's pissing me off.
Yeah. Quick, Sean, I don't think we had this in the agenda quick, and maybe we're a couple of podcasts away from this conversation, but is there any absolutes in your opinion for the trade deadline?
The only absolute that I see for the trade deadline is I think Jeremy Grant absolutely is in a different uniform. It's a matter of where.
I'm not going to go there, but I respect it. Can we hear a little bit of your explanation?
So here's my explanation. I think first of all, with the amount of reports that we're getting of all the different calls, the only other absolute is I would say, you know, expect Marvin Bagley III somewhere else.
Sure.
You know, like that's another guy. But listen, like to me, Jeremy Grant, his value is highest it's ever been. The amount of contenders that are calling the Pistons to try and get him, because this is the most uncertain we've ever been about who's going to win the NBA championship. Like parity is at an all-time high in this league. And Jeremy Grant is a type of guy that can potentially make the difference for a championship team. So if we're looking at the Los Angeles Lakers, if we're looking at the Atlanta Hawks, if we're looking even at the New York Knicks, the Memphis Grizzlies, like a lot of these teams, even the Chicago Bulls, right? Like if we're looking at a lot of these teams that like want to contend in the future, or even these teams that want to win now, adding a guy like Jeremy Grant who can provide you a solid 15-20 a game, but on top of that, give you elite defense. You know, granted, he came to Detroit to be a number one option, but I think he could be leaving Detroit being a very valuable asset on a winning team.
A starter.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely a starter. Yeah, of course. I think he's going to get a max contract.
No matter where he goes, even other than Detroit.
Yeah, I think whoever's going to trade for him has got to pay him. That's the only thing. But to me, if he stays in Detroit, that's Detroit saying, no, he's a part of our future and we're going to pay him.
And that's kind of where I'm at right now, which I think is going to be the reality. I lean more towards that camp.
You see, I understand why, because he has been really good. There's no reason to trade him. We don't have to. However, I would make the argument that Jeremy Grant's prime is probably not on our timeline, and his value is never going to be higher than right now. I just don't think it is. And so a guy that's not a very expensive contract, a guy that's showing more than people thought of him. A guy that is on a young team that they could very easily send some prospects and picks and improve their team instantly. To me, it's a no-brainer. I think Jeremy Grant's just like, he is if you were to just make like a list of ingredients of like, who is your go-to like trade deadline guy, it's Jeremy Grant. Now what I will say is generally what happens on the trade deadline day is something that we never foresaw, like Nikola Vucevic to the Bulls.
Yeah.
Or like Marc Gasol to the Raptors a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Just to name a few. Those are some trade deadline doozies.
Remember the Rondo one last year? That was just bananas.
The Rondo one?
Yeah.
Wait,
Clippers and Hawks.
That's right. Yeah, that one was weird. And everyone was acting like that was going to be like the biggest difference maker. And then like he was dog shit in a Clippers uniform, like just for lack of better terms. Like he just was like, he's not good anymore. I'm sorry. But we already got our Rondo trade out of the way this year too.
Yeah. And I think he kind of adds at least a small little piece to that Cleveland team.
Yeah. I mean, he's another guy that can facilitate the ball off the bench while Rubio's out with that torn ACL. He's a good ad in that sense. Anyway, so as of right now, that's kind of where my head's at. I think a lot could happen that day. I think obviously it sounds like Atlanta's going to be pretty active. Obviously the Lakers are going to be pretty active. A lot of teams are going to be looking to make some changes that day. So we're definitely going to be talking about that as it comes. But Troy, another thing that is coming down the pipeline, we want to check in on the most improved player race because, Troy, today, Miles Bridges scored a career high 38 points in the Mecca, in the Garden on Martin Luther King Day. One of the best days on the NBA calendar year, I would say. Mm-hmm. Yeah. A lot of basketballs played. Kids home from school going to watch some NBA games. So Troy, obviously, you didn't catch that game. I wasn't able to catch the entirety of the game, but what I do know is that Miles Bridges is for real and he's extended his game, tremendously. It looks like his 3-point percentage is actually down 10% this year, but it looks like that's because he's shooting at a higher volume. So, I mean, that's just bound to happen. Right. But Troy, what have you seen from Miles Bridges this year?
I've seen a lot. I've seen just an incredible athleticism that I think is at his peak high. He's a hungry guy, Sean. When you look at how he plays the game of basketball, he's a guy out on a mission, and I really respect that a lot, especially huge fan of him in college. I'm a big Michigan State guy, and he was in my class, actually, 2016. I think he was number 2 rated guy. Yeah. I think Cassius Winston was number 1. Who had a great college career, but not really much of an NBA one. So I think he's a guy that he's been on my radar for longer than probably any of these guys. And it's really cool to see himself represent the state of Michigan, but also get buckets while he's doing that. And he has a really cool core around him. I love that LaMelo Ball is his point guard. I love that Gordon Hayward's really taken his game, kind of reamping his game up from his Utah days and his Boston days. I think those three are fun.
He's bouncing back for sure. I think at first when we saw Gordon Hayward sign Charlotte, I think we all were kind of like, really? Like, what are you doing? But I think that deal's actually been working out pretty well for him.
It really has. And I love watching Charlotte play. I really do.
I think part of it is also because they have the best announcer in the NBA. There's nothing more satisfying to hear. Oh, Miles Bridges.
Yeah. Just as much as I don't know if you heard the LA Clippers guy who goes bingo whenever there's a 3-point shot, but
bingo or the Mike Breen bang. Absolutely iconic. But Miles. So he's gone up from 12, like, from 13 points a game to 20 points a game this year. It looks like he's really like, it just feels like he's taken the onus of being like one of the stars in this team. You know what I mean? He went from being a role player, rim runner, to a guy that wants the ball in his hands and is going to take shots. Like, he's looking to score. He's on a mission when he's on the offensive end now, which is something I think is definitely something that's been a big adjustment. Now, obviously, would love to see that 3-point percentage be a little better. However, it's hard to be, when it falls like it did today in New York. I think it just shows like what Miles Bridges' ceiling is at his peak. He can be one of the best players in the league. He can be an all-star.
Yeah. I'm really excited to see what 5 years from now looks like for old Miles. Yeah.
I'm not saying he's going to be one of the best players in the league, just to clarify. I'm just talking about what his potential ceiling could be, just because of his intangibles, what we've seen flashes of in his past. I just, there is a lot to be excited about there.
And with that lefty stroke, like I'm trying to think historically, like there's not a ton of guys I can compare him to.
Yeah.
I guess without the lefty thing, like a minor version of Pete Grant Hill is kind of what I'm thinking. Like they play kind of similar games. So
yeah, I can see that. I like that. As of right now, Troy, currently the odds for the most improved player, according to Vegas Insider, currently it goes Ja Morant at 1, Miles Bridges at 2, and at 3rd is a guy that I'm actually looking at this list. And I think if you're looking at the most improved player, if you're going off that name, Darius Garland.
Yeah, for Cleveland. He's awesome. He really has expanded his game, Sean. Troy, and this is just a 2-year jump.
Yeah. Listen, Troy, I'm just gonna be flat out honest with you. Mm-hmm. I literally never thought Darius Garland was gonna be an all-star.
Yeah.
I thought he was gonna be another Cleveland guard, kind of like Colin Sexton, all flash, no substance.
Yeah.
Can put up a lot of points on a losing team, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But he's been their best player this year. Yeah. Like we've been talking about how great Evan Mobley is, how great Jared Allen is. The center of it's Darius Garland.
Yeah, you can't be winning like they are with just one good player, Sean. You got to have your pieces together, and that Darius Garland and Evan Mobley dynamic in Cleveland has been fun to watch. Right, really exciting to see Darius Garland expand his game too.
If I'm looking at the Eastern Conference standings, and I'm looking in the playoff picture, I am praying to God I don't draw Cleveland. That is a team I do not want to face in the playoffs.
You're Memphis on the West, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. But like, seriously, think about it though. Like, what are you going to be able to do interior? Like if you're a small team, like, like say, obviously Brooklyn. Like, let's go Brooklyn. Like there. That has a lot of matchup difficulties for them, especially how weak they are at the big. Like LaMarcus Aldridge is their starting center. They have Claxton. They have Blake Griffin. Like having to deal with Jared Allen and Evan Mobley for 6-7 games. Screw that, man.
You're probably still gonna walk away with 4 games, but it might go to 7.
Yeah,
and that's scary.
Mm-hmm. That's what I'm saying. Is they're gonna be like a difficult team to face. So like right now, for example, if we were to look at the standings right now, as of today, it would currently be Miami versus Cleveland in the first round. Yeah. And if I'm Miami, that's a difficult matchup.
Yeah, I think you lose that if I'm Miami.
They very well could. Like they're an absolutely solid team. Don't get me wrong. I mean, they're 27-16. They're right up there contending with the best in the Eastern Conference, but so is Cleveland. They're within a game of each other. That's the crazy thing, is the Eastern Conference right now. So close.
Yeah, this is the best Eastern Conference since Michael Jordan.
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, flat out. Yeah, definitely at least since like 2008. or 2009 when you had like LeBron in Cleveland,
Yeah.
the Boston Celtics,
Dwight
the Pistons
Howard.
were kind of still there. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that's the closest team or conference
Closest
you can compare.
we've had in a while, but
And really you weren't much deeper than 4 teams: Detroit, Cleveland, Orlando, and Boston is really all you had.
Yeah, and I think right now there's only, in my opinion, there's only 3 teams that can make the finals in the East. It's Chicago, it's Miami, or not Miami, Brooklyn and Milwaukee. In my opinion, I just don't think Miami's got it. I think they're like I think they could be a Eastern Conference Finals team.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. They're disciplined. They can play tough. They just still don't have the star power, in my opinion.
Yeah. Quick. What about West? What are the Western teams that could make the NBA Finals?
It's, I mean, I think it's a 3-team race there too. It's Phoenix, Golden State, and Utah.
Ooh, Utah too. Hey.
Oh, definitely over the Lakers right now.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking of, by the way, did you hear Magic Johnson were calling out the Lakers for their effort?
I didn't hear that.
Mm-hmm.
I saw he liked LeBron's tweet that said, "I'll do better, guys."
Yeah. So it was actually, so I'll even look it up right now. Here's what he said. After being blown out by the Nuggets 133-96, we as Lakers fans can accept being outplayed, but we deserve more than a lack of effort and no sense of urgency. Owner Janie Buss, you deserve better. I don't know about you. That feels like a shot at Rob Pelinka.
Yeah.
Because of how things went down there between Magic and Rob. I think there's some beef there. I think there's some drama there. But listen, truth. The Lakers, they've been pitiful lately. Everyone was like, "Oh, they're just fine." Like after like LeBron was playing center for a little bit, like this is a great lineup. Of course, that wasn't going to last, right? So Magic having to call them out for their effort, not a great look in Los Angeles, not at all. So, for me, like a team, the Utah Jazz, like obviously, they've been consistent. They've been at the top of the Western standings for a couple of years now. I think with the rise of play that we've seen from Donovan Mitchell this year, I think with how elite Rudy Gobert is anchoring that defense, I think you gotta look at them as a serious contender. You really do.
Yeah, I do. It's just hard when they haven't been able to get the job done.
Yeah,
I guess.
Yeah. And also, to be candid, it's just hard to picture them beating either Phoenix or Golden State right now.
Right. And I think they're a team. Have they gotten out of the second round in the past 4 years?
No, they haven't, because
so you're number 1 seed in the West every year, but you can't even get past the second round. I have a hard time seeing them jump from the second round to the finals.
Now, here's what I'll say on that. First of all, that Denver team in the bubble was phenomenal. So that was the Lakers year 2020, right?
Yep.
And Utah still wasn't quite there. In fact, they got beat by Denver in the first round. And then you have last year where, yes, they had that really rough second round series against the Clippers when they lost to the Clippers, even when they didn't have Kawhi Leonard for the majority of the series. And then you have, now this year, I think is the first year where it's like, okay, the Lakers are not a threat to make it to the Western Conference Finals. I think as of what we're seeing right now, I think we're going to see another first round exit out of the Lakers, in my opinion.
Yeah. 100%.
Because as of right now, the Lakers are an 8th seed. So they would have to get through the play-in tournament, and they would have to face probably Phoenix or Golden State in the first round. And if they're facing Phoenix in the first round, they're not beating Phoenix in the first round. If they're facing Golden State in the first round, they're not beating Golden State in the first round. So that's just the way it is. So Utah, they're going to have a tough time because both those teams are really difficult. I personally think the matchup that would be more favorable for them is Phoenix, I think the high splash power of the Golden State Warriors, I think Rudy Gobert's game is kind of neutralized there because even though he can lock down the interior, doesn't really matter if you can lock down the interior when they're just raining it from three. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Whereas Phoenix is kind of like a more natural kind of like matchup for them, like Devin Booker versus Donovan Mitchell, like Rudy Gobert versus DeAndre Ayton. You know what I'm saying? Like that's kind of like a more like that just feels more comfortable for them. Mm-hmm. So I just think, in my opinion, they still have to be considered a finals contender. They can still look serious and look like they can go to the finals. I'm not saying they're going to the finals because I don't think they are, but they're definitely a contender for sure.
I'm glad we touched on that.
Yeah, 100%. Me too. And speaking of things we got to touch on, Troy, you know, we can't end an episode from Half Court before we take a trip to Mount Rushmore. Now, obviously, not always Mount Rushmore, but that's what we like to call the segment. Anyways, today we do have a Mount Rushmore. And Troy, you want to describe what we're going to be talking about in this segment?
Yeah, we're going to do a Mount Rushmore. So top 4 players of all time who have never won an NBA finals. You can have gone to the finals. You may have even played in a game 7 of the NBA finals, but you have never won a ring. Your hand is ringless. And yeah, I'm really excited to start it off. And I guess I'll do the most obvious one, in my opinion. The one that in the recent era and conversation everyone talks about, and that is the answer, Allen Iverson.
Yeah.
He has to be in my top 4, Sean. I mean, he's a guy that 2001 year when his Philadelphia team did make it to the finals, he was a man amongst boys that season, Sean. And he's a guy that really, even after that season too, I mean, he carried himself incredibly throughout the Eastern Conference. He was always in the MVP conversations, just 6 feet tall, but the guy could play. He was flashy. He could pass the ball. Very, very underrated defensive player. Great scorer. Sean, can I do a Mount Rushmore without having Allen Iverson on it?
No. Yeah. He got to the finals once. It just, for whatever reason, Philly was just never able to put a team around him that could seriously get to that point. I think some of it too is, you know, he just, you know, he kind of came into the league at a weird time because right as he was reaching his apex, there was this guy named LeBron James that was coming into the league. So it kind of just felt like he had this super short window, right? And I remember having to watch the Pistons have to face Allen Iverson in the playoffs quite a bit, or just face him in general back in the day. You know, listen, AI, he was the answer. He's an absolute stud. The guy I would have next personally is another all-time great guard. And it is the one we just saw go to the finals, Chris Paul.
Okay. I like it. He probably wasn't on my list, Sean.
That's okay.
I'm glad you said it. Let's talk about CP3.
Yeah, absolutely. The point god, probably the best point as far as like the true definition of like what you want out of a point guard, like the prototypical point guard, you think of Chris Paul, right? Yeah. Every single spot in his career, he has won. He brought the Hornets to the playoffs. He made the Clippers competitive and relevant. He helped Houston be dominant and get to the Western Conference Finals. He made Oklahoma City a playoff team in his 1 year there. And then you go to Phoenix and he's completely shifted the culture and changed everything, got to a finals in his first season with Devin Booker. I'm thinking at the end of this season, we might not have him on this list, but as of right now, Chris Paul, as far as, you know, he's just another one of those great players that's never won it. You know, obviously, when you go, it's easier to think of former players because right now, like anyone could still win it. Right. But as of right now, Chris Paul is someone that if he's not on the Mount Rushmore, he needs to be at least close to the Mount Rushmore. You know what I'm saying?
I fully agree. And 1 week from right now, as this video is recorded on Monday night, I will be in the presence of Chris Paul in Phoenix watching him play the Utah Jazz, and that'll be fun. And I think, when we think of peak Chris Paul, I think of the Clippers, and I even think of the Hornets, man. And that's 10 plus years ago.
Yep.
So to think that if let's say the Suns win it this year, his legacy changes. And it changes in the end of his career, which we don't really see that very often, Sean. We see guys win it in their primes and then they kind of fall off or branch off, jump team to team.
Right.
But we would have a very interesting story. And I think, to me, when I think of that, let's just think of the scenario Chris Paul wins this year. I think of guys to come, rising stars. We've mentioned a guy like Miles Bridges earlier. We mentioned a guy like John Morant earlier. Guys who we have no idea the type of careers that they will have.
Yeah.
But let's just say they have a career like Chris Paul. Wouldn't it be cool that we're talking about the beginning right now? And let's say 15 years from now, Sean, they're lifting the Larry O'Brien trophy. I mean, it gives me goosebumps to think of what the future of the league will look like if Chris Paul wins the championship.
Well, here's the thing, Troy. It's crazy because, to your point, he obviously, he's not as good of a player as he used to be as far as like his youthfulness and things. Like he can't go out and be like the dominant guy for your team every single night. Right. But Chris Paul has just always consistently been an amazing point guard. And I think Phoenix is just a perfect position for him because he doesn't have to be that guy. All he has to do is be the quarterback. All he has to do is get down to the offensive end and he has to make the right read. And he's going to make the right read every single time. You know what I'm saying?
No turnovers tonight against San Antonio. 0 turnovers tonight. He is a true man's point guard.
Well,
I'm glad.
Chris Paul's on that list. Here's the thing with Chris Paul, man. He can go out there. He maybe scored 6 points against Detroit. He had such an effect on the game. Like if you watch like his ball movement, if you watch like how defenses are just picked apart within 7 seconds of Chris Paul like having the ball, and then that's just his passing. You don't even talk about like his silky smooth jump shot or like that between the leg dribble he does that's like that fake pass where he goes in between his own legs and does that fade away on the baseline, like stuff like that. Like Chris Paul's just money. He is he's one of my favorite players of all time. I think he doesn't get a lot. I think he gets a lot of flack when in reality he should be getting a lot of praise because I don't think he was the problem in literally any situation he was in.
And Phoenix would not have been in the finals last year if it weren't for Chris Paul.
Oh no,
that Western Conference performance he had against LA, awesome.
They would have been a playing team if they didn't have Chris Paul.
Yeah, which is incredible. Okay, next on my list. Big old man from New York, number 33, Patrick Ewing.
Okay.
I'm going Patrick Ewing on this one. Listen, the guy up there with Elijah Wan in the 90s, best center of the decade. There's no doubt about it. He was a guy that would have, he was in the finals the year Michael Jordan played baseball against the Houston Rockets, where Houston won. So that was probably his only window to win a championship because you couldn't get past Chicago. Had some good games against Indiana and Reggie Miller's team. He was a guy that, unfortunate. He was a guy that we see so often where all-star type of player, but runs into the player of the decade, which was Michael Jordan for him. We see guys like DeRozan, we talked about earlier, running into LeBron James. That was his tale. That was his story.
Yeah. Damian Lillard being the guy in the West, that dominant guard that runs into Steph Curry. You got it.
So we see this pattern over decades. And unfortunately, Patrick Ewing is that guy for his decade. But he still, in my opinion, like he has to be top 4 best players. What about legacy of Patrick Ewing do you want to talk about, Sean?
Yeah, I listen, to your point. When you think of the New York Knicks, you think of Patrick Ewing. When I think of the Garden, I think of Patrick Ewing. When I think of when I think the greatest, like, because it's crazy because perhaps the best teams that New York's ever had are the teams that didn't win a championship, right? Obviously, to your point, ran into Michael Jordan each and every year. It's just, it shows like we often define greatness and the first place we go is championships. But I think it does a disservice to the legacy of a lot of other players because it just shows you don't have to win a championship to be great. You do have to win championships to be an all-time great. I would make that. But Patrick Ewing, he's a great player. He could never get it done. And speaking of guys in New York that could never get it done, that have never won an NBA championship, the next guy that I would think would be on this list is Carmelo Anthony. Yeah. I'm not sure what your next guy was, but I was thinking Carmelo's got to be on here.
Yeah, I like Carmelo. Sean. But I mean, look at the old Utah Jazz. I mean, we're not a pro Karl Malone podcast, but I gotta go with Karl Malone.
I think Carmelo was better than Karl Malone. It's apples to oranges. They played different games. Karl Malone was great. He was dominant. Him and Stockton, they had multiple different chances to win a finals. At least they've gotten there. Carmelo hasn't even gotten there. And everyone was like, "Oh, good, he can go to the Lakers so he can finally get to the finals." They're not going to the finals. Carmelo, he and LeBron were the highlights of that draft class. He was coming in
a national champion,
being viewed like if LeBron was the chosen one, he was the chosen 1.1. Like he was the other one. You know what I mean? It was perceived that him and LeBron were going to run the league for years. And as dominant as he was on the offensive end, he never could get it done. He couldn't.
Yeah.
And I don't know if, his priority, like he loved playing basketball, right? He absolutely loves playing basketball. That's why he's still playing. He's a hooper. He just wants to go out and hoop. However, there have been times where they really could have went out and, he could have been in situations where he could be on some really good teams, but instead he signed a big contract and kind of ruined that. You know what I mean? So he kind of put the New York Knicks in salary cap hell. I'm not blaming that on him. I'd take the money. I think if I was in a situation, I'd be hard pressed to not take the money. However, it's absolutely crazy that he's never won a championship or he's never even been close.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I can't really argue with that, but I mean, number 2 scorer of all time.
Yeah.
I don't know. Top 5 rebounder, right? Top 5 shot blocker. Maybe not shot blocker, but
listen. How about this? Let's agree that Karl Malone is probably the better player. But how about we say fuck Karl Malone and put Carmelo Anthony on the list?
High five to that, Sean.
Yeah. How about just for the sake of screwing over Karl Malone, let's say it's Carmelo.
Fair enough, Sean. Fair enough.
Because we are a fuck Karl Malone podcast. We do not like him here, but that's okay. Yeah. So I would say, Troy, that's a pretty good 4. But is there a guy on there that because I said Chris Paul. Was there another guy you were thinking of that we didn't name?
I guess Charles Barkley, but not really.
Yeah. Charles Barkley's another good one. I'll throw out I'll throw out a couple honorable mentions. Tracy McGrady.
Pistol Pete
Maravich. Vince Carter. A lot of great players.
Yeah.
A lot of great players. Steve Nash.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Oh, man, it's sad to think of all the players that we've never gotten to see win a championship.
Antonio McDyess.
It's just that you've named him along with those guys. Like, I love Antonio McDyess. It just so caught me off guard. Wasn't he on a Spurs team?
He was on a Spurs team, but not a championship Spurs team.
Hold up. All right, ring count. Antonio McDyess. Did he ever win it? Does he have a ring? Yeah, he never won a title. Oh my gosh. Which also, dude, the thing that's sad is like he was on that 05 Pistons team. Like,
I know
that it was such a good chance, and he goes to the Spurs. Like, it's just absolutely crazy. You know, it sucks.
Yeah. That's why I said it, because like it's kind of like, remember that old meme from 10 years ago, Bad Luck Brian? I mean, he's kind of the bad luck Antonio for championships.
Well, and the sad thing too is he was such a good player that he probably was a ring away from being considered a Hall of Fame player.
Yeah. And,
you know
and that's
kind
of why, I mean, like I said it as a joke, but I was kidding, not kidding with Antonio McDyess because of those awesome stats.
Right. All right. All right, I just looked up an entire list of the best players to never win a ring. So let's
we got a lot of honorable mentions here.
All right, yep. So it's a top 10. So number 10, Russell Westbrook. Number 9, Patrick Ewing. Number 8, Elgin Baylor.
Ooh, yes. Rest in peace.
Steve Nash, Charles Barkley, Karl Malone, James Harden.
Ooh, yes.
John Stockton, Allen Iverson. And it has Chris Paul at number 1.
I think James Harden will retire a champion.
Yeah, he'll get a championship. If he's going to keep teaming with Kevin Durant, he's going to get a ring.
Yeah.
He's just and at the very least, I could also see James Harden like at the end of his career just being a really fun veteran, like veteran minimum scorer off the bench kind of guy.
Even a more fun Carmelo. Yeah.
Dude, I just hope we get to see him slowly look more and more like Kimbo Slice as his career goes on. We just get full Kimbo Slice Harden in his last year. That's all I want. But yeah, I need a bald Harden at some point, dude.
Kind of changing topics, but I don't know how I got to this super quick. 45 seconds. We will not go past this, Sean.
Troy, we're at the end of the pod. This is for us. This is for us. Okay. If you're here, if you're watching at this point, you're a crazy motherfucker, just like Troy and I. We're like, yeah, go ahead, dude.
Okay.
Don't apologize.
Does LeBron James retire a Los Angeles Laker, or does he sign with whatever team drafts Bronny?
Wow, you stumped me. I think he ultimately retires. I think his goal is to play with Bronny, or at least share the court with Bronny. I could see him waiting until Bronny's rookie year, playing with him, and then retiring.
Playing with him. So like, let's just say Minnesota drafts him. He goes on a veteran 1 year from Minnesota.
I think wherever he could be drafted is definitely a contender for him to go sign. But on the other hand, I could also see LeBron retiring as a Laker and waiting just so he has the opportunity to face his son in an NBA game.
Yeah.
You know
I see both scenarios. That's why I wanted to ask.
Yeah, I could see both too. If I had to go with my gut right now, I would say he retires a Laker. Just because, I don't think LeBron James will ever be paid a veteran minimum contract, even in his final years. I think he's just too valuable. I think he's going to be a max guy till he retires. But at the end of the day, it's just one of those things where, it's just, he could do whatever he wants. Thank you so much for tuning in. This has been From Half Court, where Troy and I sit down and talk all things NBA basketball. If you like that, be sure to like this video, be sure to subscribe, and be sure to share with your friends. Also, be sure to follow us on social media at TroySergey44 and at Sean Halfcourt to keep the conversation going. Thank you so much for watching, and we will catch you next time from Half Court. Be sure to subscribe, you bastards.